Have you ever been so busy that you wonder, will this ever end? Or is there all this is to life? Have you ever been so busy that you're like, okay, I have got to have a break or I'm going to break? And so how do we begin to understand, how does God's grace speak into, guide us through, impact us? How do we experience God's grace when we are busy? Because that's our culture, right? Our culture is to be busy. In fact, it is so much a part of our daily life. How often have we found ourselves saying, when somebody goes, so how's it going? And our answer back is, fine, just busy. It's become part of who we are to such an extent that maybe we don't even realize sometimes, or only when it gets so extreme. And so here's a moment of going, okay, when I feel like life is so busy, how do I begin to experience God's grace? And the first question here around that is one around worry. And it's kind of interesting to think of this with the context of Matthew 6:34. Therefore, stop worrying about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And if you were to look through the rest of that chapter, it's really about how God is present with us, how God's grace is with us. And so how often when we are busy, is it attached to worry? So think about that. Like worry, I've got to do this, I've got to do that because I may not feel like I'm enough. Or we feel like, well, if I drop the ball on, or if I don't do this, how often is our busyness tied to worry? Worry about what other people think. We worry about what we think of ourselves. We worry about what's going to happen next if I don't do. And so to begin to take that step back of, okay, if God's presence, God's grace is with us, and it speaks into that space of worry, and if our busyness is tied to how much we can get done or not, our self-worth, worrying about what other people will think, is there a way to begin to really get through this? And that comes a little bit out of 2 Corinthians with Paul. And what he's going to write here kind of helps us in how grace begins to change this conversation of busyness. Chapter 9, verses 8 through 12. God has the power to provide you with more than enough of every kind of grace. That way you will have everything you need always and in everything to provide more than enough for every kind of good work. As it is written, He scattered everywhere, He gave to the need, His righteousness remains forever. The one who supplies seed for planting and bread for eating will supply and multiply your seed and will increase your crop, which is righteousness. You will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous in every way. Such generosity produces thanksgiving to God through us. Your ministry of this service to God's people isn't only fully meeting their needs, but it also is multiplying in many expressions of thanksgiving to God. All right, so that sense of God has the power to provide you with more than enough of every kind of grace. Now that's kind of interesting, right? And to think about that, the grace of saying we are enough, that grace of saying, you know what, that worry that we have may not be so important. That sense of what grace is of, you know what, we may feel like other people don't love us, but God loves us. That sense of how grace is constantly calling us and redirecting us in love and in joy. And that there's plenty of it to go around if we will just notice. And how that grace begins to make us question things. Of going, okay, am I busy because I am worried about something? What are the worries that are attached to how I am currently filling my time? The things I keep choosing to say yes to. Am I choosing to fill my time with things because it is out of necessity? It is because it will help me to thrive. It is for my health. Or am I choosing things because I am fearful of? I worry about. Why do we fill our time with particular things? And are we filling ourselves with with things that point to God's grace? Are we filling ourselves with things like being able to take time in our relationships to cultivate some love and joy? Are we taking time in serving others, of being an encouragement? So thinking through those moments when we feel the pressure of busyness, when we feel like we can't catch our breath, and taking a good hard look at what do I need to let go of, and what do I need to be doing that's attached to love and grace, that's attached to joy, that doesn't take life, but instead encourages and helps thrive. Because it's kind of interesting when we begin to think about those things that take and pull and make us just feel more busy, because we don't think we're actually accomplishing anything. But when we can have the knowledge and the experience of, you know what, I have tried to come from a place of love, I have tried to extend forgiveness and grace, I have tried to cultivate joy, it begins to shift how we perceive our actions, that they have meaning instead of just being the things that we worry about, that list of whether or not it'll get done or not. So my hope is that as you feel that pressure of busyness, that you will begin to question and ask, wait a minute, what are the things I need to let go of today? What are the things that maybe I need to be more focused on? How is worry playing a part in what I'm choosing to fill my time with? Because we were created to live in peace by a God of love. So may you have some of that. May you find that today.